Good evening and welcome to tonight's webinar on supporting our EAL learners across the whole school in post-primary classrooms. Please note that this webinar is an online version of the professional learning event offered throughout this year, 24-25. Let me start this evening by introducing myself. My name is Natasha Lavelle and I am a professional learning leader with IJA. I am also accompanied this evening by my colleague Nora Melia, who will be taking you through the second half of this webinar this evening. We are delighted to be offering this webinar, and we would also like to thank you for joining us this evening, as we know that it's not easy to join of an evening, especially when the sun is shining, and that schools are such busy places. So we really do appreciate you taking the time to be with us here this evening. On screen, you can see our QR code that will bring you to all the documents for our EAL support this evening. We will now drop this link into the chat for you. You will notice that the document contains 4 Padlets: our EAL support for school leaders, support teachers, mainstream teachers, and digital supports. I will give you all a minute just to have a look at that link in the chat. In order to ensure that you get the most out of this evening's webinar, here is some important information. Throughout the evening, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A feature on your control bar, and one of our team will reply to you directly. Throughout tonight's webinar, we will also share some links with you via the chat feature. Please note that Zoom condenses videos, so there may be a slight delay when viewing videos on screen depending on the broadband speed. And finally, this webinar is being recorded, and we will be making it available on our website in the coming days for any colleagues who may have been unable to attend this evening. With that, I will just take a moment before we begin the webinar to show you where these resources are on our IJA website for future reference. So as you can see on screen is the IJA website. And if we click on the post-primary section, when we go into the IJA website, we'll scroll down to the inclusive education. Under EAL, you will see it will bring you to all of our EAL resources. Within that, you can see we have news and updates, key documents, professional learning material, preparation for teaching and learning, and resources. All the resources for the Padlets for this evening is in here. We also have professional learning material. And as you can see in here, we have webinars and additional supports from throughout the years that may be of benefit to you. And this will be where this evening's webinar will be later put up. Bringing us back to the webinar this evening. Our focus for this evening is to reflect on teaching, learning and assessment, and collaboratively consider how we can integrate English language support into the mainstream classrooms. We hope that by the end of this session this evening, you will have had the opportunity to consider and reflect on your understanding of supporting EAL learners in your context, with a particular focus within mainstream classes. We will explore and share examples of effective practice in linking language support to the curriculum and in developing a whole school approach supporting our EAL learners. Our webinar this evening will focus on 4 main aspects, as you can see here on screen. Firstly, we will reflect on who is an EAL learner. We will also explore ways to welcome our EAL learners into our school, to develop a whole school approach that allows our EAL learners to establish a routine and ways to allow them to advance their learning while they develop their English language proficiency. Within that, we'll be looking at the mainstream classroom teacher's role in collaborating with the language support team to work towards achieving targets once their language proficiency has been determined. My colleague Nora this evening will then take you through some strategies for teaching and learning in the mainstream classrooms, alternative supports, and finally, alternative digital supports, and finally to explore how these digital technologies can be used to support learners in the post-primary classroom. So firstly, we might reflect for a moment on who an EAL learner is. It is important to note that there is no such thing as a typical EAL learner. EAL learners include the recently arrived learners fleeing from war, or a second generation learner born here whose parents do not speak English. An EAL learner is any language learner whose English language proficiency has not yet reached the B1 level, and we will be talking more about this in a moment. As we know, our EAL learners, as with all of our learners, will have different social, emotional, and learning needs based on their background and experience. And regardless of literacy or English proficiency levels, all of these learners have the potential to learn and should be given the opportunity to access the same curriculum as their peers and experience success along with their peers. So with that, who is the EAL learner? Who is responsible for our EAL learners? This is an important question, and I suppose one that is asked in many schools. I will pause for a moment to give you an opportunity to read the quote on screen. As you can see, the EAL pupil remains the responsibility of the mainstream class teacher. This means that in post-primary, it is the subject-specific mainstream teacher who is responsible. EAL support teachers are appointed to assist schools and classroom teachers in providing additional EAL support to teaching pupils who avail of EAL. It is important to therefore note that all teachers are EAL teachers and that the collaboration with the EAL support teacher is crucial. It is important at this stage to look at some of the key messages. Each student has the potential to learn, therefore each student must be offered access to the curriculum. Language support is curriculum linked. Our EAL students will not succeed if they cannot access the curriculum. Their language proficiency must be established and shared with the student, parent, language support, and mainstream subject teachers so everyone is aware of how best to proceed. This is particularly important if we notice that our EAL students is not making progress and that this may be a flag for us to look further into this. It is important also that we draw your attention to some of the key national reports and frameworks that impact EAL provision. These documents can all be found on our Padlet. The document titled Meeting Additional Language Needs, the document in the centre of your screen, provides guidance on how schools can effectively support students who speak languages other than English. The document emphasises the importance of accurately identifying and assessing students, encourages tailored support, inclusive practices, supports professional development, and emphasises the importance of monitoring, evaluating, and collaboration with colleagues on how best to support your students. We will drop these links into the chat function for you now that you may wish to download or bookmark for future references. The key to understanding and supporting language acquisition is compromises of two aspects. We have our BICS, which stands for our Basic Interpersonal Communication Skills. BICS represent the language of the classroom and the daily language that a learner may need. An early example of BICS might be a primary school when the students learn to say the phrase "An bhfuil cad agam dul go dtí an leithreas" in the Irish language as a request to use the bathroom, or when you're abroad and you want to order a meal in the target language. CALPS, Cognitive Academic Language Proficiency. This is the subject-specific language necessary to achieve in the relevant subject area. This is relevant for all students, not just our EAL learners. These BICS and CALPS, these are the foundations of language acquisition. Teachers, be it language support teachers and mainstream teachers, need to have a good understanding of BICS and CALPS in order to be best placed to support our EAL learners. Our EAL learners must acquire the basic interpersonal communication skills, their BICS, and their cognitive academic language proficiency, CALPS, simultaneously. BICS will take an EAL learner from 6 months to approximately 2 years to develop. However, it may take several years for an EAL learner to gain a high level of CALPS. And therefore, we cannot wait for our EAL learners when they're fluent enough in English for them to access the curriculum content. Our EAL learners must be supported to develop their language and skills in all subject areas, even while learning English. Subject classes provide the perfect context for our EAL learners to develop both BICS and CALPS simultaneously. It is important that we understand the cultural and linguistics profile of all our learners. This is central to the progression through school. It is important to know who our EAL learners are, where they come from, and which languages they speak and to whom. This enables the schools to provide better care for the learners. It establishes a clear picture of the languages spoken within their school context and make the appropriate plans to support all learners. This might be done through a student passport or similar, depending on your school. In building this profile for our EAL students, we must know their level of language proficiency and how best to support them. Language support for EAL learners is based on the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, as you can see now on our screen. SURFR is an international guidelines used to describe language proficiency levels of language learners. As you can see here, SURFR levels range from working towards an A1 to a C2 for the very highest level of language proficiency. The majority of textbooks at junior cycle level would cater for the B1 threshold proficiency level. EAL learners with less than a B1 proficiency in English are entitled to language support EAL hours. If a student is receiving language support because they have yet to acquire a B1 proficiency, a record of their progress with individualised targets, which works much like an IEP, should be kept. Once students reach the B1 threshold, they are no longer entitled to EAL support. It is essential, therefore, to establish each EAL learner's English language proficiency level so that the learners, their subject teacher, and language support teachers can work together to progress their learning. Language support teachers can use the post-primary record of student progress, which, as I said, works like an IEP, to establish each EAL learner's starting point and use the listed SURFR benchmark as targets. We will talk you through what this process might look like in a moment, because while the testing, the use of the NCCA Post-Primary EAL Toolkit is carried out by Language Support Department or team in your school, it is essential that you, as mainstream teacher, are aware of the process and the language proficiency level of your students. We are now going to take a listen to an EAL coordinator, Sharon Deasy, who talks about how she assesses her students to determine their language proficiency. after they have settled into school. She details in this how she collaborates with mainstream classroom teachers and shares the results of the EAL assessment on a shared drive. She also mentions how targets are set and shared so that each EAL student has an individualised education plan which each teacher works towards. I will now play the clip.
I use the EAL assessment twice a year, usually a few weeks into the school term or in October, or a few weeks after the students have enrolled in our school. I carry out the second assessment where I have finished in the first assessment, and I try to do this in around February. I try and assess all the students together. However, sometimes I may carry out 2 sessions, especially if there are EAL students with a better grasp of the English language compared to others. When I see a student struggling to answer questions, I praise them and finish their exam there. The next time I test them, I start the test from the point where they last stopped. I find the initial EAL assessment important because it assesses the language skill in areas of listening, speaking, reading and writing. It helps us as teachers to figure out what help these students might need in their studies, and the teachers can look at how well their students can understand and use English in different situations. With regards to the learners, it helps them to get the right support to do well in their studies, making it easier for them to learn and participate in class. When I have assessed the students, the results are uploaded onto the shared drive so that mainstream teachers have a better understanding of the students' ability to understand the lesson. With these results, teachers can provide specific help like extra language support or resources so that the EAL learners can understand and engage with the curriculum more effectively and easily. I find the EAL results allows learning support teachers to develop individualised learning plans and targets for their students. It gives the teachers a guide for outlining specific language goals and strategies to address their students' unique needs. It also tailors support for each student's proficiency level, with focus on language development within the context of the subjects they are studying. Subject teachers may integrate language development activities into their regular curriculum to provide continuous language support.
As you can see from the video clip, the testing is done using the NCCA Post-Primary EAL Toolkit. And for those of you though who may not be familiar, we will now include the link into the chat. It is the responsibility of every mainstream teacher to know what the language proficiency of each of their EAL students is and what targets they are working towards. As a mainstream classroom teacher, this will have implications for your planning, for teaching and learning, and also assessment practices. As previously mentioned, if a student is receiving language support because they have not yet acquired the B1 proficiency, a record of student progress with individualised targets should be kept. To support the assessment of our EAL learners to establish their language proficiency, we have created a post-primary record of student progress document, as you can see on the screen. This document complements the NCCA Post-Primary EAL Assessment Toolkit and can be used to provide plan forward for EAL learners to develop their language skills across the areas of reading, writing, speaking, and listening. This document gives an overview of what can be expected of an EAL learner at each proficiency level. As you can see, we have the A2 way stage on screen. It provides EAL learners and language support teachers with benchmarks that can be used as sequential and progressive targets. This is really important to establishing proficiency levels of our EAL learners and how we share this with our learners themselves, their parents, their guardians, their classroom teacher, and other relevant personnel. This ensures that we are all working together to support the success of our EAL learner. Please note that in a moment we will look at these skills in more detail. But a learner must meet the benchmark of each skill before they can be considered to move on to the next level. Having established each student's language proficiency, the language support teacher will liaise with the mainstream classroom teacher to identify targets aligned with the record of student progress. How this collaboration and communication takes place will depend on your specific school context. We will now look at creating a welcoming environment with a focus on establishing a whole school approach to welcoming students. Creating a welcoming school environment and classroom is integral to the holistic development of the student, which in turn is reflected in their learning. This is also in accordance with the Department's Wellbeing Policy Statement and Framework Policy 2019, which emphasises the need for students to experience a sense of belonging and to feel safe, connected and supported in schools. It's really important that we establish a welcoming environment from the beginning. And therefore we focus on language proficiency testing or targets that we allow our students to settle in to their new school. There are many ways that we can help them feel welcome and support them to develop a sense of belonging. In order to learn, it's important that our students feel safe, calm, connected, and that they are given achievable tasks. Feeling that they belong and are able will help them cope and feel safe and connected. So we must consider ways that we can support our students in this. As a school community, we can support them by creating a welcoming environment, such as setting up a buddy system, for example, a subject buddy, and encouraging them to become involved in extracurricular activities. You might think of your own school context. You might visualize your school for a moment and think about, is there evidence of home language for all of our learners? Do displays and materials reflect all the cultures and languages? Are languages, countries and cultures of all learners in the school community incorporated into lessons, projects, and are they celebrated? On screen, you can see some ways that we may further support our EAL learners to feel welcome. For example, we might include greetings in our classroom in home languages or signpost important areas of the school in home languages, like the main office. We might survey students and celebrate with an International Day where all learners have the opportunity to share their cultures and languages with their peers. As always, we are grateful to teachers who share their practices with us. And as you can see on screen, we could have one school last year sent us in some pictures on their International Cultural Day, where you can see the different cultures were represented in stalls in the main hall. You can also see on screen how the home languages, that welcoming environment is also there. And finally, a picture was taken of a school community, and displays on the halls of their entrance of all the different languages. These examples are shared with you tonight to display some of the things that can be done in schools to make our EA learners feel welcome and included. These ideas are not exhaustive and they are also they don't also have to be difficult or time consuming. One such strategy that is effective is the use of language maths that supports students learn their everyday language of the classroom. These language maths are available from the PPLI Languages Connect website, and we will drop that link into the chat now. Language mats can be downloaded and printed for your classroom. These mats include basic greetings, question words, and classroom vocabulary. As you can see, they are available in various home languages and provide the English translation. They allow students to ask simple questions, for example, can you repeat that? And understand instructions, for example, open your book on page X. These language mats are also useful for teachers when providing instructions to students and are a very handy resource to have on the teacher and student desk. Teachers can point to the relevant translation in the home language while speaking in English. The link is now going to be shared into the chat. Some of the students entering our classroom bring with them their own challenges. Some may have experienced trauma. They may come from a war-torn area. They may have witnessed things young people should never witness, and they may have experienced the trauma of the journey here to Ireland. Perhaps they are experiencing social exclusion. They may have experienced social exclusion due to their language barriers, racism, or socio-economic difficulties. They may have or still be experiencing racism or bullying inside or outside of the school. Some students may have experienced delayed or interrupted schooling due to the long-standing conflicts in their country or due to gender issues. There may be different attitudes to schooling and discipline in their culture. Therefore, EAL students present with the same additional educational needs and neurodiversity as non-EAL students, but this can sometimes be masked or hidden by language barriers. They may be sitting in the classroom experiencing enormous amount of frustration at not being able to communicate or participate fully or achieve the results that they know they are capable of. These experiences or challenges can present themselves in the classroom in the form of poor attendance, poor behaviour and disruption, perhaps disengagement, bullying behaviours, early dropouts, quietness, or maybe being exceptionally well behaved. It is easy, I suppose, to focus on the challenges, but let's look at some of the positive factors that our EAL learners bring into the classroom. We know that there are cognitive benefits that come with the bilingual and learning additional languages, that these students have several languages in their repertoire. Their experiences of changing countries may have built resilience in them, or they may have learned resilience from their families who moved here when they were born in Ireland. They may have developed language awareness that they can now transfer across other languages. Different attitudes to schooling can be both a positive and a challenge. For example, some cultures have a very strong respect for education. Due to all of these experiences, they may have developed a solution-focused attitude and may be good at problem solving. As we can see, there is lots that an EAL student can bring into our classroom. They will also bring a cultural diversity to the classroom that can be assessed as a benefit for other students. It is essential then to create and maintain a strong link with home, to foster a positive outlook on education, on school, and on the opportunities that are available to our EAL students in Ireland. In the document that was mentioned earlier, Meeting the Additional Language Needs, it also mentioned that schools who provide most effectively for EAL learners also had well-developed structured supports around parental engagement. These included communicating with parents in home languages, perhaps arranging events such as a welcoming coffee mornings, parent buddy system, translation of key documents from the school's website, and ensuring that parents of children and young people with EAL needs were represented on the Parents Association. This is something for us to consider as mainstream classroom teachers. What ways can we plan or communicate with those at home so that there is a clear and effective line of communication and that the targets and plans for our students are both understood and supported? This might be a note in the journal that is translated into a home language, for example, or placed on a sharing platform with a parent and guardian to see.
The homeschool liaison does communicate with parents and has translated letters. In the past we would have translated letters with regard to subjects and reducing subject timetables, to give extra English support.
We do a food share on a different day during the week. We have a lunch, and this is where we get the parents of our non-national students involved as well. So these parents come in and it's like a food fair. You see the pride in both the student and the parent for making the food, bringing in the food as well. If the family unit do not have the facilities to cook but would like to be involved, we offer that family unit the chance to come in during the morning and use the home ec rooms here to create the food, because we don't want a student being isolated or being deprived of this lovely opportunity simply because they might not have the cooking facilities, especially if they are under emergency care. We have a breakfast club here. All parents are invited to become part of this if they so wish. We specifically invited our Ukrainian mums and guardians to come maybe to work one morning a week at it, to come in on the bus with their girls, because we thought it might include them into school activities, and we also thought it might help their daughter to see an adult, be it their own mum or another person that they know, and to have language around them just for reassurance.
So a really nice video there that gives you some ideas of how to support the parental engagement. I will now pass you over to my colleague Nora, who will take you through the rest of this evening's webinar. So I want to thank you. And Nora, are you okay there?
Yeah, I think I might need to get you to stop sharing, Natasha, and then I can share here, if that's okay. Okay, thanks, Natasha. So as you can see here on screen, I am going to take you through the third and the fourth section. And we'll move on to the third part, which is strategies for teaching and learning. So by being in the class with their peers, our EAL learners are constantly exposed to the language of learning, the language for learning, and language through learning. And this supports opportunities to immerse students in the language and to use it where possible to build confidence. The mainstream teacher works with the language support teacher to help the student to go over vocabulary, pronunciation, and how to use new vocabulary to access the curriculum. And in this way, then, students are routinely practicing BICS while also acquiring CALP through immersion in mainstream classrooms. So it's very important to offer students opportunities to speak and use oral language. Initially, this might be in pairs or small groups until the students build up confidence. It may also be with the classroom buddy. So on screen now, you see some ways to support the development of oral language and an immersive environment. One very important consideration for mainstream classrooms is the seating arrangement. An EAL learner ideally should be seated at the top of the classroom and paired perhaps with a native speaker. This helps to develop BICS and ensures that the EAL learner has someone who they can ask questions to and who will support them in class. Other points to consider on screen around building learner confidence are structured peer interactions, for example, group work, explicit vocabulary instruction, like the teaching of keywords, home language scaffolding, signposting lessons and assessment, which may offer the learning intentions and the success criteria, or choice in the mainstream classroom. So, for example, differentiated modes of homework, tasks and activities, or even their assessments. And this will include a UDL approach then to learning, which offers multiple modes of engagement. So building learner confidence helps students to be comfortable in their new environment and to feel included even when they are only beginning in their language journey. So we could consider little things like including students in daily routines, greetings in the morning, or daily repeated conversations. For example, we could ask students what class they have come from, how their morning has been so far, and so on. And this informal conversation then allows our students to not only feel connected with ourselves as well as teachers, but it supports them to recycle the same language and to build on new vocabulary. And importantly also, by chatting to the students in this way, they become more aware of idiom differences, of phrases that we use daily that are prevalent in the English language use in Ireland. And this in turn then may support them to increase interaction with their peers. A whole school approach to visuals for classroom instruction may be beneficial as well, incorporating visual elements and cues into the learning environment and across all subjects promotes inclusivity and helps structure the lesson for our EAL learners. And opportunities for peer interaction within school may also help. We've already heard from the last audio visual there about how they use breakfast club. We could also consider a lunchtime club. After school activities and even activities outside of school are so important as well. The opportunities overall to link students to support our students to practice their speaking, but also to immerse them in the culture, habits and rituals of our community is so important. Okay. So building on this then, a key component of ensuring the success of our EAL learners is to establish a fully inclusive classroom environment. And on this infographic here on screen, you can see what genuine inclusive education may look like. It was created by Professor Linda Graham and Hayley Tancredi. So what we could consider here is seating. Our EAL learners seated strategically, ideally at the top of the class and with native speakers, with our own Irish students. Their seating arrangement is vital to the effective development of BICS and CALP, because when our EAL students are placed on their own with other EAL learners, for example, separate from the mainstream class, it limits their ability to develop BICS and CALP. Another nice idea is to have a buddy, and the buddy might rotate for each subject then. So they would get to know as many students as possible. And of course, this supports our own students, our native speakers as well, to develop their leadership capacity. So overall, where possible, EAL learners should spend the vast majority of their time in the mainstream classroom setting with their peers. As previously mentioned, the establishment of a classroom buddy or subject buddy system might help in that successful inclusion. Where possible, lessons should be signposted with clear instructions. As mentioned earlier, our colleagues in PPLI, there's language mats available. The link has been put into the chat earlier on. And those mats really are, so they are very aesthetically appealing as well, could be used on the wall, like we mentioned earlier on the visuals. But they are available in a variety of languages, and these can be accessed and ordered through the website that was put into the chat earlier on. We might also try to give one instruction at a time. We may consider explicitly teaching key vocabulary. And as mentioned earlier on, we may consider offering a choice of activities. To further support vocabulary instruction, we could create explicit vocabulary lists in multiple languages that may help. One example might be through the use of Google Sheets. Google Sheets is a practical and versatile strategy for supporting our EAL students, and it is available to you this evening on our Padlet of resources as well. And finally on this slide then, a keywords copy might be used by the student or you might display a keywords poster in your classroom. Here we can see an opportunity to build cross-curricular vocabulary with a focus on examination vocabulary. Simple but effective strategies might include word of the week. You might like to use this to focus on exam vocabulary, for example, a word wall, or a vocabulary challenge. So if you wished, you could add a little bit of competition between different year groups or tutor groups, and a vocabulary challenge could be built into tutor time, maybe once a week or on a Friday, for example. So awareness of these activities are suggestions, and they can be adapted to suit individual schools. So translating apps, language apps like Office Lens and Google Translate can support language acquisition. They're especially useful in aiding the use of home language and supporting students to advance their curricular learning. Our learners can be easily overwhelmed with large volumes of text, and in some cases in experiencing new subjects. With the click of a button, students can hover a device over entire pages of a textbook and translate it into their home language, which not only makes the material instantly accessible, but also builds on learner confidence and allows them to fully engage and immerse themselves in the subject material. Teachers can also provide assessments in English and various home languages quickly. And these apps allow students to advance their knowledge and learning of curriculum subjects like chemistry or geography, where the language may be very specific, while also developing their level of the English language. So dependency on these translation apps, you will find, then decreases as language proficiency develops. And as you can see here on screen, a teacher in County Leitrim shared with us how they use Google Translate in their classroom. Both apps work in the same way, and as you can see, their work can be translated into multiple languages at the touch of a button. So the whole school use of a bilingual dictionary means that we are empowered through access. So by providing a direct link between students' native language and English, bilingual dictionaries can empower students to take ownership of their language learning journey, and they can independently explore word meanings, clarify concepts, and build on their vocabulary. And by using a bilingual dictionary, it also means that we shift, I suppose, our students from dependence to interdependence. So instead of relying solely on teachers or classmates for translations, students can use bilingual dictionaries to become more self-reliant learners. And this shift from dependence to independence is a key marker of student agency. And schools may also like to create a bilingual personal journal that learners can take from one class to the next that connects across the curriculum. Now, I seem to have, just apologies there, I think I skipped a slide by accident there. So I'm just going to go back to that. So that's this one here. Okay, just bear with me now for a moment. Okay, so hopefully you can see that there. As previously mentioned, student agency is an essential part of the inclusive classroom. On screen, you will see a quote from Vaughan 2020 on the value of allowing our EAL students to take ownership of their own learning, which will help to develop the student, their personality, help to develop the student as a whole. And this coincides with the key competencies at senior cycle, particularly managing learning and self. Student agency allows learners to deepen their understanding of how learning works and can further use this knowledge to improve their learning. They become more aware of and nurture their abilities and interests, and they develop strategies which help them to make decisions, to reflect on their learning, and decide on next steps in learning and in life. They gain confidence. We talk so much, I suppose, this evening about the importance of our students gaining confidence and being able to act independently. As you can see, it's a thread running throughout the webinar. We realise the importance of that confidence in our EAL students. So simple tasks like utilising a student activity box at the back of the classroom or having an online shared version with staff allow students to do tasks in class according to their proficiency level. And students will independently seek out a task when written work commences and complete it with the guidance of their teacher. So the aim here is that students are using the same textbook as their peers and working independently just like their peers. And on screen, you can see a number of supports that we have correlated that would work well with the idea of a student activity box, and they are available for you also. Okay. All right, on this slide then we have some key considerations regarding the use of resources or handouts. And all learners can further enhance supportive teaching and learning approaches in our classroom. It may be supportive, for example, to use bullet points as a way of summarising longer texts. You may also consider labelling drawings and posters or using digital technology where appropriate. Highlighting and underlining keywords and phrases can also help aid their importance and student understanding. And studies have shown that the use of a yellow background can further assist our learners. And of course, we're all familiar maybe with the use of the yellow pages, the refill pads that are available now as well. And, you know, something as simple as that can assist our EAL learners as well. Okay. All right, so the collaboration between language support teacher and mainstream teacher is extremely important, as we know, to ensure that we are meeting the needs of our learners. So now we're going to take a look at how this might work, how this might look. So while we acknowledge that all language learning happens across the 4 strands of reading, writing, speaking, and listening, we're going to look at these individually by first focusing on listening. On screen, you can see the listening targets across the SEFR benchmarks for working towards A1 pre-literate and A1 breakthrough. For instance, you can see a language support teacher might highlight targets for students at different levels, and the mainstream classroom teacher needs to access this then for their individualized plan. So this could be taped into their journal as a hard copy. So I suppose straight away, then you can see it very quickly when they come into class, or depending on your own school context, you may like to upload it on Teams or VSware or Google Classroom. Either way, the mainstream classroom teacher that is teaching the EAL students is working towards the same targets for that student, which may be a different target to another EAL student who has a different level of language proficiency. So I suppose a lot of that maybe depends on your own school context. Here are some strategies we can use to support learners at working towards A1 pre-literate level right up to A1 breakthrough in a meaningful and practical way to provide targeted, individualised support. So on screen, you can see a number of sample tasks for listening. These might include using podcasts as a stimulus, the use of audiobooks to support reading skills, dictation, or think, pair, share. You will see we have included an extract from a woodwork textbook And some of the sample tasks that we will go through now can be found in the resource Padlet as well. The CEFR benchmarks, you can see there underneath the extract. So the teacher might give one instruction at a time to make effective listening easier and use similar language so the words become familiar. If the teacher was to give some questions, one possible approach that supports the learner to develop their listening skills is to use Rally Coach. And this is a paired listening approach, which we will look at in a little bit more detail. So you have some ideas there, sample tasks on the right to support our students' listening skills. Okay, so here's Rally Coach. Rally Coach is one inclusive approach where students can work in pairs to clarify their ideas and sound out their opinions. We can see here that it is a strategy that allows students to work in pairs and working on a stimulus piece together. For example, students can use Rally Coach to clarify points. It would support a teacher using an extract like the one you've seen from the woodwork book to assess learning through questions and answering in pairs. And this approach also works well with reading comprehension, where students work with just one pen or pencil between them. So it works in the following way. As you can see, step by step laid out there on screen, student A is responsible for initiating the response to the first question, but student B has the pen. Student A discusses their ideas with student B, and after they discuss these points together, questioning and evaluating the validity of their opinions and ideas, student B records the answer. And during this activity, there are many opportunities for students to say, is this what you meant? Do you mean? It allows students to listen to their own ideas and to rephrase their thoughts. So you can see on screen, it's a very collaborative activity. I think what's important about this as well is, it's a safe space for our EAL students, and that you're working maybe with just one other student. So it might help to build their confidence as well. It allows students to talk through their ideas with peers and to, I suppose, sound out their arguments before they begin to write. And the focus here is on, again, the safe space, reaching consensus first on the response, and then working together on word choice and coherence to decide the best possible way to represent their ideas in a clear and effective manner. So we will now focus on oracy. We've looked at listening there. We're going to focus on oracy now. And on screen, you can see the speaking targets across the CEFR benchmarks for working towards A1 pre-literate and A1 breakthrough. So for instance, you can see a language support teacher might highlight different targets for students at different levels. And the mainstream classroom teacher needs access, like I said before, to this individualized plan. So again, have you got your individualized plan taped to the front of the journal? Is it in Teams, VSware, Google Classroom? And both the EAL teacher, your language support teacher, your mainstream classroom teacher are working towards the same target. And again, this target is most likely going to be a different target to another EAL student who has a different level of language proficiency. So here are the strategies language support teachers can use to link language support to the curriculum for learners at working towards A1 pre-literate right up to A1 breakthrough in a meaningful and practical way to provide targeted, individualized support. Again, all of these sample tasks can be found on the Padlet. And as you can see there, the CEFR benchmarks are underneath the extract. While we are, I suppose, in this section of the webinar, looking at each of the the skills individually, all of these sample tasks develop listening, speaking, reading and writing skills. And the EAL learners at this level will require the greatest level of support this way. So you've got your sample tasks there on the right. Okay. So on this slide then, we're going to take a listen to an EAL teacher from a school in County Kerry, and they talk to us about how they use Immersive Reader in their classroom and the many benefits of Immersive Reader. As always, we're grateful to teachers from around the country who share their practice with us. You can also see the on screen there, the icon for HelperBird. So HelperBird is an extension that allows similar functionalities to work on Google Chrome, on Firefox, Microsoft Edge, and Safari as well. So they are all available in the Padlet as well, just in case your school is a Google or an Apple school and you might like to try it out at some stage. So I just need to double check here now that I am sharing my sound. Okay. Okay, so hopefully this works for you now.
The Immersive Reader helping with regards to EAL, and indeed the general population of the school has been great. The EAL student can copy and paste into Immersive Reader either questions from examination papers or parts of a text, so that it can be translated and read out loud for them at home. They find the picture dictionary function very good. Sometimes they find it quite hilarious too. In Translate drop box, you have the languages that you need. For example, you do have Ukrainian, Russian and Georgian would be language of a lot of Ukrainian students as well, and we find that we have a lot of Pakistani students too. They can highlight nouns, adverbs and adjectives. That can be very good for their literacy too. In order to help to read, the syllable breakdown function or the line-by-line reading function can be very good. So what we've done is that we have created a file where we've put in the textbooks. So it might be a Word doc of Blood Brothers, it might be a Word doc of Mice and Men, whatever text you were doing with them, okay? Chapter 1 that they've been asked to read tonight, they can copy and paste it in. They can translate it to whatever language they need to increase their understanding of it. The Immersive Reader would read it out loud with the English version too. So if they just read along with or listened and repeat and read, they pause, they read the line and move on. So in ways they have a voice at home.
Okay, so that's Immersive Reader. Now, I suppose if you're already familiar with Immersive Reader, you'll know what a wonderful resource it is. And as they say, what's essential for some is good for all. You know, it's something to use in the mainstream classroom. We're here tonight, obviously, talking about our EAL students, but it really is a wonderful support for all of our classes. Immersive Reader. Okay, so that's that one. Okay. The next one here then is focusing on reading. Then on screen you will see the reading targets across the CEFR benchmarks for working towards A1 pre-literate and A1 breakthrough. So again, you can see a language support teacher might highlight different targets for students at different levels, and the mainstream classroom teacher needs to access this individualized plan as well. So the same, I suppose, there as before. So here are some strategies that support teachers can use to link language support to the curriculum for learners at working towards A1 pre-literate level in a meaningful and practical way to provide targeted individualized support. And as before, let's move on to the next one here. As before, you know, while we're looking at this specific skill here, it supports all of our skills. So finally, this section here, our final section, focuses on writing, and you can see the writing targets across the CEFR benchmarks for working towards A1 pre-literate and A1 breakthrough. So the language support to the curriculum, this is for working towards A1 pre-literate. Here's an extract on screen now from a science lesson. And we see the benchmark targets for this EAL learner are what they need to master. And there are many ways we can manipulate this piece of the text to help the learner master these targets. So for example, we may begin by holding the writing tools effectively. We could ask the learner to highlight the letters that they are learning or have learned so far. So let's take the letter S, for example. The language support teacher may highlight the letter S in the first 2 or 3 lines, modelling and scaffolding the activity for the learner. And the learner is now making marks on paper, holding a writing tool effectively and mastering their awareness of letter formation in a meaningful and practical way. And of course, as said before, they're also developing their listening, speaking and reading skills. The learner listens to the language support teacher's instructions, responds non-verbally or verbally, reads through the text at their level and finds the letter S and so on. So you can see, while we're using a science extract here, how this could be used across all of our subjects really. We could then maybe remove the letters that this learner is working on and invite the learner to reconstruct the piece. So the learner is making marks on paper, holding the tool effectively and mastering the awareness of letter formation. And then the last stage, in beginning with reading and writing fluency, is to convey meaning. In this stage, a student might like to draw images to attach meaning to different words in the extract. So a student at this stage might respond non-verbally or verbally and therefore might be receiving a large amount of language support. So it's really important that the mainstream teacher collaborates with the language support teacher in order to support the individualised targets. So here are some other strategies that we can use to support learners working towards A1 pre-literate level in a meaningful and practical way. On screen, you can see sample writing tasks for working towards A1 pre-literate. So let's explore the benchmarks or targets an EAL learner at A1 breakthrough level, the next level up from the previous example, might need to master. On screen is a piece of a text from a standard geography book. There are many ways we might manipulate this piece of text to help the learner master their targets. So for context, this learner has developed a level of writing and is now working on comprehension. So their area of further need is in relation to using key vocabulary. And this teacher is targeting the completion of gapped sentences using word banks. So we note that the focus here should be on this target and this target alone until the EAL learner has mastered that one. And it is also important to note that the learner is developing again their listening, speaking and reading. And Rewordify, you can see the little icon there in the corner, is one website that will organise these activities for you. And you can see the reference to that tool there. So the report meeting additional language needs whole school and classroom approaches for inclusive language learning, findings from primary to post-primary school inspections of English as an additional language in February 2024, that's a mouthful, emphasises that inclusive assessments are a vital aspect of success building for EAL learners in our schools. It says that effective practice for children and young people with EAL involves creating an environment where they feel welcome and valued for who they are, assessing their needs using valid assessment approaches, identifying clear targets. And this approach then contains the key to our schools moving towards truly inclusive school communities. So the report also emphasises that a flexible and responsive approach to assessment is required for students to reach their full potential. On screen, you will see some prompt questions around this issue. Can we be more flexible? So just try to think maybe of different ways to traditional assessment, different approaches to offer a variety of assessment. On screen, you will see that we asked ChatGPT to summarise the plot of Private Peaceful by Michael Morpurgo. Then we prompted the app to translate the summary of chapter 1 into multiple languages with the click of a button. So what this emphasises, I suppose, is that ChatGPT might support a teacher plan a lesson with prompts on age, learning outcomes from the specification, activities tailored to student level, and a nice prompt is to ask ChatGPT for a hook to a lesson or topic you are discussing. So it might offer some nice leading activities that are inclusive and that supports learning. Now, while this can be useful, teachers need to be aware to read the summaries before translating to make sure that it's accurate, as AI might not have access to all novels, especially newly published ones. So you might get some discrepancies in its explanation. Everything produced might not be accurate, but it certainly is very useful. So now we'll move to the final section here, where we're going to look at some digital tools which can aid us in supporting our students to access the curriculum. And we're going to start here with, let's move on to this one, Microsoft PowerPoint Live. So I'm just going to play this for you.
This short video will explore how to use Microsoft PowerPoint Live to support all learners, particularly those who might have English as an additional language. On screen, you'll see that I have opened a PowerPoint presentation in Teams, and you'll see that I have a number of tabs across the top here. But for the purpose of this video, we're going to look at the slideshow tab, and under that you have the Present Live option. Present Live is an accessibility feature, and it allows students to translate exactly what has been said during the presentation into the language of their choice. And I'll show you what that can look like now. So I'm going to click on Present Live here, and that is going to bring me to a QR code. And what my students would do is they would then take a picture of this QR code, and I'll show you now what that looks like from the students' point. So they'll scan the QR code, and then it will bring them automatically to the PowerPoint Live. Then they will be given the option to choose their language of choice. So you can see that I'm scrolling down through the languages there, and for the purpose of today I'm going to choose Ukrainian. And then on screen you'll see that what the teacher is presenting in class has been translated into Ukrainian.
Okay, right. So I'm conscious of the time, so I'll move swiftly on to the next one here then, which is Microsoft Office Lens, and it works with devices. This is really useful, I suppose, for in particular for phones or tablets, where students can take a picture of the page and translate it with the click of a button. So we'll just briefly take a look at how this one works.
To use the Microsoft Lens app, click on the app and it will open like this. Now we've taken a page from the Politics and Society book, and we just capture a scan of that page and click the Immersive Reader option. It will open like this. Now the Immersive Reader has many functions, but for the purpose of today we're just going to look at translation. You can see that at the click of a button you can choose many different languages. Today we were going to choose Russian. You can translate by word or by document. Because we are looking at a textbook here, we will choose the document version. This means that a student could have their textbook open in English and the home language version next to them on a device like this. They can choose to read, or they can click the green button and choose to listen.
Рефлексивный дневник. Воспользуйтесь советами из приведенной ниже таблицы.
This is a very powerful tool for our EAL learners to access the curriculum in their home languages.
Okay, and that brings us then to Canva Magic Switch. It's a free to use. I'd imagine many of you out there are familiar with Canva. It is a godsend, isn't it? Free to use online graphic design tool. You can use to create all of your class tests, presentations, posters, videos, logos, and much more. And Magic Switch is the latest addition to the platform that can be used to translate a body of text or an image of text or to a number of different languages. So let's just take a quick look at how this one works.
Canva has added a new function to its platform called the Magic Studio. Magic Studio offers a range of functions under its umbrella to enhance any design, such as Magic Switch, Magic Animate, and Magic Morph, to name a few. For the purposes of this demonstration, I will show you what Magic Switch has to offer, and in particular, I will focus on one function called Translate. Magic Switch is particularly useful for teaching and learning within the EAL classroom, as it allows users to effortlessly translate any text within your design into different languages. It also allows users to convert their designs into various formats and resize them for different platforms. All you need to do is open Canva and then open the design you want to transform. For today's presentation, I'm going to focus on the Old Man and the Sea and a short summary of that text. To translate, you go to the Magic Switch option from the toolbar at the top. From the menu that opens, select Translate. Here you can select the language you'd like to translate into from the drop-down menu. For the purposes of today, we're going to translate this text into French. Next, you can select the pages you wish to translate. And you finally have the choice to translate the existing design or create a new copy. Once you're ready, you click Translate and your text will automatically translate. Once translation is completed, you get the copied and translate message and you click Open to view.
Okay, and finally then tonight, we're just going to take a look at Rewordify. And the little icon up there earlier on. Again, a free to use tool for creating differentiated activities.
Rewordify is an online tool that improves reading, learning and teaching in the EAL classroom. It simplifies difficult English, teaches vocabulary, produces engaging lessons while improving learner outcomes. To simplify any text, all you need to do is highlight the difficult sentence, hold text, or input the URL into the yellow box at the top of the page. Then click Rewordify Text and you will instantly see an easier version. The reworded words are highlighted and you can click on the highlighted word to see and hear the more difficult word. Rewordify offers a number of other features which support the teaching and learning of your selected text, such as parts of speech, which identifies and highlights parts of speech in the text, such as nouns, pronouns, verbs and adverbs, stats, which provides specific details on sentence length, words or syllables, share, which allows you to share, save, edit or delete your document, and by clicking on the Print Learning Activities button, you can print a variety of quizzes and learning activities. Here you will have exact control for specialised vocabulary instruction. For example, you can print customised word lists, vocabulary lists with or without definitions, or closed activities, all linked to your reworded text. There is also the option to generate answer keys, which are available for the starred options above. And finally, by clicking on the Settings button in the top right-hand corner, you have the option to adapt the layout, level and style of the site to suit your learners' needs.
Okay, so I hope you find some of those apps useful. We'd like to thank you. That's it. We'd like to thank you for your attention throughout this evening, and we really appreciate your engagement and participation, particularly in this beautiful, on this beautiful sunny evening. You will find some further supports highlighted on the screen that might assist you. And once again, on screen, you can see the QR code or link there to the Padlets. And
also, just a reminder, Nora, as well, as I said in the beginning of the webinar, all the resources for today and all the links as well, should you wish to go back over them, you can get them there on our IDGE website, www.idge.ie, go into the post-primary section and under inclusive education. And as we said, the recording of this webinar will be going up into that section in the coming days as well. So again, just from myself and Nora, thank you very much for attending this evening, and we hope that you enjoyed it.
Thanks very much, everyone. Bye-bye.